Welcome, everyone. Today, I'm going to speak about something that is, on the one hand, very simple, part of the astrology fundamentals. However, I'd like to offer a new perspective. Obviously, my approach is evolutionary. And so it's nice, important to revisit some of the astrology fundamentals from this soul journey and archetypal point of view. And today's topic is the modes, also referred to as quadruplicity, because basically it divides the 12 signs and 12 houses into three, which means there are three groups with four signs in them. So the first one is the cardinal signs, which include Aries, Cancer, Libra, and Capricorn. And it is thematically associated with the angular houses: first house, fourth house, seventh house, 10th house. Then the fixed signs: Taurus, Leo, Scorpio, and Aquarius, which we're going to learn are not really that fixed. It's a misleading term, but it is thematically associated with the succedent houses: second house, fifth house, eighth house, 11th house. Then you have the mutable signs: Gemini, Virgo, Sagittarius, and Pisces, which are interestingly involving most human symbolism. Gemini is two people, a boy and a girl. Virgo is the Virgin. Sagittarius is half horse, half human, and then Pisces is fully animal. And we're going to understand why. So thematically associated with the cadent houses: third house, sixth house, ninth house, and the 12th house, which I love to speak about. So this is part of the curriculum that I offer in my study program, the River of Stars School, where you can be going through a diploma program. There are many different tracks you can follow. You can just do the beginner's track, which even people who are advanced, like we do today, I'm sure many of you have heard about the cardinal and the fixed and all that, but through the course, we go deeper into understanding the evolutionary themes, the archetypal influence. And so you can choose that track which covers the fundamentals. And it's really a game changer for many, because so many people have bits and pieces. And that fundamental track provides the solid foundation in astrology. If you don't have that trunk for your tree, it doesn't matter how many branches you grow, it's not going to fall into place. You're not going to be able to analyze a chart properly. Then you have the more comprehensive program, which really covers from A to Z and prepares you for mastery in chart analysis. Not just understanding all the chart components, but how to bring them together, the synthesis, which is for many people the hardest part. Now, this cycle started last year in 2023, cycle 14. But if you join now, this year in 2024, you can benefit from all the classes, both live and recording, self-study, all the classes of cycle 14, and you naturally will also merge into the following cycle 15 when it begins the end of next year. Enjoy all that is offered for cycle 14 and the new programs, the new workshops that cycle 15 will include. So check my website, see the QR code here, and let's begin. Cardinal signs. So the cardinal signs represent a continual state of becoming, which basically means that they are immediately related to our sense of identity. And if you're in a continual state of becoming, naturally, when you have a lot of cardinal energy in your chart, you will have several cycles, cyclical new beginnings. And how to use this, I may have 3 planets in cardinal. Some people, have a stronger emphasis of a particular mode, but most people have a little bit of everything. So you can basically see where the cardinal signs are landing, which planets are in cardinal signs. And these planets, these houses, are going to experience this continual state of becoming, this new identities. On some level, we can say cardinal signs are in a continual identity crisis because they're becoming. And so they never fully get there. And what we often miss about the cardinal sign, you'll often read in the classic astrology textbooks that cardinal signs have to do with initiating, all true. But it is really about becoming. It's, I think, a more appropriate term, because what is becoming about it, the cardinal questions are, who am I? What am I to do? What's the direction of my life? And if you look at the angles, the angular houses, 1st house, 7th house, 10th house, it's 4th house, they're directional. So they tell us the direction of your life. It's the compass, east, west, north, south. So it's, it does reflect a direction, but this direction is an ongoing process. So typically, cardinal signs will go through phases in their lives where they're going to develop a part of their identity for a certain number of years. It's like, let's say I'm an astrologer, and let's say I have a lot of cardinal planets. So at some point in my life, in my developmental process, I decide to start my practice. It's a rite of passage. Cardinal signs are about these rites of passage, becoming. I'm becoming a professional. I'm becoming a spouse. I'm moving to a new city. I, start these new chapters in my life. But then there's a twist, because I continue to become. And so if I decided when I was 25 to become an astrologer, I may have another activation where I'm going to take the astrology to a completely new level. So maybe I'm going to change countries. Maybe I'm going to change the type of astrology I'm doing. I'm going to shift from evolutionary to financial. Or I'm going to stop doing readings and I'm going to teach exclusively. Something about my identity and my direction will be recalibrated and be new. So there's a newness in the cardinal signs, but there's often a blank slate. So let's say I'm changing from evolutionary to financial astrology. I have to start all over again, build a new clientele, create a new website. My identity is changing. Sometimes cardinal people or the cardinal influence in our lives can lead to radical change of identity, where from an astrologer, you become a photographer or a carpenter. You go in a completely different direction. So on some occasion, you continue what you started, but you take a turn. You don't just go in a straight line progressively forward. There's some kind of a 60-degree angle, but sometimes it's a 90-degree angle, and it's starting from zero. And so people with a lot of cardinal energy go through these cycles where they reinvent themselves. New marriage, new country, new profession, etc. Now you look at the signs we talked about, but also the houses. If you have transits, or if you have many planets in the angular houses, 1, 4, 7, 10, this can also apply. Now, when you have, for example, Mars, which is the ruler of Aries, go through a retrograde phase, which will happen later this year. So Mars retrograde is often just that. It leads to a change of direction in your life, a recalibration. So many people reinvent themselves under Mars retrograde cycles. The same thing with Saturn. When Saturn crosses an angle, it's a cardinal planet, you go through these rites of passage. You can become something new. The ripeness of Saturn is about changing, and you'll see, we'll use examples, and you'll be able to demonstrate some of that. What we often forget about the cardinal signs is that they're not just moving forward to a new identity. They're quite often sitting on a fence. And that fence is between the past and the future. Cancer always wants more time. Cancer never feels ready. Capricorn can rush into being ready. Give it to me. I'm going to handle this. And they may not be so ripe. It's like you cut the apple from the tree a little too prematurely, and then it's not really doing what it's supposed to be doing. And I'm going to touch on Libra. It's the most interesting and complex. But one thing I want to remind everyone is that cardinal signs are often on this fence, and they're often in a hesitating mode. There's a lot of back and forth and moving forward and taking steps back. And so if you're in a job transition and you're, let's say, starting a new chapter, wanting a new job, there may be a lot of consideration. Did you really close the door to your previous chapter properly? You're starting a new relationship. Is your old relationship really complete? Is your ex trying to pull you back? And so there are always situations with cardinal signs where they rush forward and then they have to backpedal and wait. And then, it has to come in the right time. And then they're ready, and they finally settle into their new chapter and spend all time there. And the naivete that exists with cardinal signs is that they think that once they chose, that's it. That's it. I'm an astrologer. That's it. I'm an artist. That's it. I'm married to you. I know who I am. I've become this person. And there's a sense of accomplishment, but there's an illusion that they've reached the top of their mountain and that this is it, when in fact, it's a cycle. And at some point, what is some point? 7 years, Saturn cycle, 9 years, nodal cycle are the most common. But after a few years, they complete that chapter. And the process of becoming is in motion again, and they're becoming something new. They're morphing into a new identity. And they go through the same motion of reinventing themselves, starting from scratch, or just using their past to remodel their future. And a new identity is forming. So this is never ending. And it's true for all four of them. So one of the things, each one has a different function and role, but they're all busy developing the sense of self and our direction in life and our identity. Who am I? Where do I belong? What's my flag? And what am I identified with? So Aries is that ignition, the spark. And then you test your strength through Aries. You feel that you can, the ability, capacity. So Aries says, I can do it. And then they feel like, can I do it? I can do it. Oh, can I do it? Doubt, and then blindly moving forward. Same thing with Cancer. When Cancer is identified with something, if Cancer likes something, wants to live somewhere, they are going to be so focused on that, so emotionally invested in who they are and what they're becoming, that they give all of themselves, and it has to be at their own pace. This is why Cancers, are not very eager to work in the corporate world or to work in a place where there's a team of people, because they have to do things on their own terms. They're not good compromising. They're not good adapting to whatever the situation brings. There's a very strong conviction, a very strong sense of self in that moment, even though that sense of self is changing over time. When they are who they are, that is that. And so it has to be on their own terms. They need to be in control. And they will do the things, they will give the personal touch in everything that they are involved with. And rushing a Cancer is a lost cause. Don't do it. You're wasting your time and you're going to wreck the plans. So doing it on their own terms is critical. And when they are ready to bloom, it's beautiful. It's strong. There is, however, a catch there, because Cancer, if the Cancer is not receiving enough support, and if it is not in a way responding to that process of becoming, what it can is, like I said, never feel ready, constantly preparing. The sense of becoming is then not leading to a finite result. So that is one of the big challenges of Cancer, is that you risk overcooking, over processing, overstaying in the womb, and then problems, begin. The other thing is that because Cancer is not naturally ambitious, if we speak about professional development, they may not be impressed or affected by deadlines or whatever, another person tells them to do. And so it's on their own term, meaning it's on their own clock. And that can also lead to procrastination. But as far as an identity, once, when the Cancer is decided, it's there. It's fully present. There is no other sense of self. It's very well defined. If they like their country, if they like their family, if they like their occupation, and of course, if you have Cancer in the 9th house, that it's going to have to do with your emotional identity with beliefs, etc. Now, Libra is the most interesting because it's the least expected. We tend to think of Libra in a very superficial way as the relationship and people pleaser, but there's a lot of identity development in Libra. And of course, part of it involves others. So one of the things that Libra instinctively feels is the side of life and the side of themselves that have not been developed. So comes the time when, whether you have planets in Libra or whether there's a transit in Libra, where your trajectory is going to take a complete 90-degree, 180-degree turn. So when you thought you were going one way and you were this person, I am a husband, I am a carpenter, I know, what defines me, comes this Libra activation, and it's completely disorienting, recalibrating, and quite often taking you to an opposite direction. Say you were living in the city, you were an IT programmer. Comes this Libra, you meet a new partner, and this partner, is a hippie who loves to be in nature. And by association, you now explore a different side of life that was not initially in your own repertoire, in your own checklist. So Libra brings this unexpected twist and turn, and that, who's the trigger? It can be a relationship, but it's not only a relationship. Whatever it is, whatever you were doing is going to happen in an opposite way. This often happens with, can be illustrated also with people who are born with the moon or with Saturn in Libra, is that as far as their identity goes, they can be strongly identified with one parent, single mom, or strongly, connected to their father. So there's one parent who becomes the dominant parent. And then something happens and there's a shift to the other parent. Sometimes it's because of a divorce, custody issue, sometimes a loss. And so the parent that you were close to is not available, not there, and you're suddenly with the other parent, and your identity radically changes because the other parent becomes your, role model. Obviously, Saturn and Moon in Libra kids can also be involved in trying to mediate between their parents. So they can see both sides, mother's side, daddy's side. And their sense of identity is modeled by this fluctuation. Who are they, trying to help? Another thing is that they, if there is a divorce in the family, they may take a side, but then flip to the other side. I thought daddy was the bad guy because my mom told me how awful he was. But then I learned, as I mature, that he wasn't that bad, and he had his reasons for doing what he did. And so there's some kind of radical change of identity through these parental dynamics that then are taken out to the outside world as well. So as we go through our Libra changes, we can experience the most radical identity crisis, but it can obviously be a revelation. The need for balance in Libra will take you from one extreme to the other. If you were living in the city, you may move to the country. If you were a philosopher, recently did a reading for someone who was a Libra who was very much into high-minded studies and philosophies and courting a lot of great teachers. But then life circumstances pushed this person to abandon that and start a more traditional job, a practical job that would be financially more reliable. So from this kind of philosophical, high-minded identity, they shift professionally to a bread and butter mindset. That's very Libra transitions. And your identity kind of evolves this way as you swing from an extreme to another. And if you're not careful, you keep swinging forever. You don't find that middle ground. So the balance is not established. Now, whether even if you don't have planets in Libra, if you have transits in the 7th house or just, cardinal energy in Libra, this can also be part of what happens to you. Capricorn, another sign of becoming, our MC, our Capricorn energy represents what we idealize, the thing we want to become, the role models that inspire us, and therefore, who are we going to be when we grow up, right? It's that Capricorn MC direction. So the sense of becoming here is over time, as you go through your life experience and studies and diplomas, and you gain experience, who are you becoming? And are you really ready, ripe to fulfill that role? So Saturn represents the biological clock along with Cancer. And represents that ringing bell. You're ready now. You're getting married. You are getting a promotion. You have to move to another country. All these things that build you, that developed your identity, but also the downfalls. Because if you're not ripe, or if you need to develop yourself in new and different ways, and you're holding on, you don't want to change, you're trying to hold on to the past, you can experience a downfall, a crash, a loss. And so another identity crisis when, you thought you were that company, you build it, and then you go bankrupt, or someone else takes over. These life circumstances, and that can also be in a relationship where you are replaced and you face a rejection, and someone else, your spouse or your partner wants a separation and is dating someone else. So this feeling that your time's up is Capricorn. And are you in tune with your own clock? Do you naturally feel that time's up, or do you need that shock and cold shower to remove you from where you are? So the same way Saturn in angular houses will trigger this developmental changes. So cardinal energy, identity in motion, very much, about how we fulfill our destiny ultimately, and what we're doing with our own lives. Now, I'm going to share this chart. A fellow astrologer artist, Jeff, who has agreed to explore this. So before I speak to him, I would just want to show you, he's born with Sun, Venus, Mercury, ascendant, South Node in Aries, opposing Pluto, square Mars, and Mars is the ruler of all these Aries planets. So lots of cardinal energy. Let's hear it. So I'm here with Jeff Lorius, and I'm sharing his chart. He kindly agreed to be our analysis subject for this video, highlighting the cardinal energy, because Jeff is a heavy Aries, born close to an eclipse. So welcome, Jeff.
Thanks for having me, Maurice. It's great to join you.
Beautiful. And I just want to introduce you. Jeff lives in Boulder, Colorado, and as a strong Aries, he's an artist. And he basically designed the covers of my books. You will recognize Neptune here, this amazing illustration that is both abstract but also very captivating. The choice of colors and shapes. So very vivid, which, we definitely can see the Aries vitality, even though it has a Neptunian quality, which of course taps into your own 12th house. And so would you, generally speaking, as we look at your chart, would you agree with the assessment, the cardinal energy, that process of becoming, and that cycles, going through cycles where you reinvent yourself? So for a few years doing one thing, and then, kind of starting over and and having these blank slates where you develop yourself in a new direction, or you just start over? Does that mean anything to you?
Yeah, I mean, 1,000%. That's basically I guess, the ground of my, experience my whole life. I mean, coming out of school, I studied psychology and art, and it always interests me the convergence of like, development, as we're speaking about development, and and art. And so I taught art, coming out of college. I used to run a art program for kids, which I love. The Saturn in
Yeah.
Leo in the fifth. That was
Mhm.
really, I really felt a lot, and just moving that energy. I just love being around. Just consecration, constant movement, and then yeah. So at some point, that led me to Naropa in Boulder to do my master's in art therapy, which was, going to take that to another level where I would have my own private practice and have my own studio out here. And yeah, so once I got to the end of my graduate program, I just was like sick of jumping through all the hoops of, having to get my now, uh, my license and all that. So I kind of just went the route of like wanting to just have my own studio and have kids come in after school, kind of similar to what I was doing. And but since then, that was around, I guess, 2007, somewhere around there, around my Saturn return. Um, I just been trying to figure all that out, because I'm constantly frustrated about the, I don't know, I guess the Saturnian Virgo and meat and potatoes of, running the day to day and having the overhead. And
Yeah.
I guess a lot of the cardinal energy I feel too is like, it moves it moves my system so fast that I get frustrated, and it's been like a practice to come to maturity around slowing down and integration, and just finding, I guess, like a floor and a ceiling to kind of just balance everything out. So
So I'll stop you there because
yeah.
you kind of use words that are very important for us in our study. And here I'm sharing the chart of when you moved to Colorado. That was in 2004. So this is basically you were raised in New York, then enrolled in Naropa, which is a university in Boulder, Colorado, for art therapy. So what we see, in the natal and the transit is that Saturn is in Cancer, a cardinal sign by transit, and in your fourth house, which is this rite of passage of basically having a new home and, a new life, rerouting somewhere else, reinventing yourself in a new context. So very cardinal, angular sign, Cancer, angular house, fourth house. And of course, it kind of activates the Grand Cross with the Aries. And it's interesting that you speak about this frustration between the speed of what you have in your system and slowing down the processing, which is very much the Aries Cancer square.
Mm.
Both these signs represent this cardinal energy of becoming, but Aries definitely rushes forward and has so much to ignite and deliver, and the passion, the ignition that comes with it. And then the Cancer, speaks about integration, um, really feeling that you're allowing your art, the enough space, enough nurturing, enough processing to really bloom into who you can be and who you're meant to be. So, some people say, but Cancer is not such an active sign, but it is definitely cardinal because it just uses time differently. It's the time to allow the blooming process, and you can't rush it. It's gestation. The risk with Cancer is over processing, right? When you never feel ready, when you keep nurturing and nurturing and you don't feel the outcome, which is then the Capricorn polarity of the cardinal. But it's interesting for you because Mars is the ruler of all that Aries. So not only do you have a big Aries cluster, stellium, and the ascendant, but that Mars is in the fourth house and it's ruling all these Aries planets. So amplifying that cardinal energy. Another note about what you said is that, you have so much in you and it's hard to bring it to the day to day, that kind of Virgo detail work. And that's, of course, in your North Node in the sixth house, balancing, the inspiration, the the downloads that you have in your 12th house, and how to kind of make it practical, how to have make it sustainable in a financial and in a material way. So thanks for sharing those details. I'm going to also share the time where you married, which was 9 years later. So you moved to Colorado in 2004, then you married in 2013, the marriage, and now Saturn is in your seventh house. And so it's not in a cardinal sign, but it's in an angular house, a cardinal house, the seventh house. And Venus, marriage, relationships, the ruler of your seventh house is on that Mars in the fourth in Cancer. So we see a lot of cardinality in the marriage milestone, another obviously rite of passage, and another form of reinventing yourself. And I assume that the marriage, also meant, redesigning your career. So what we're seeing, what I want to demonstrate here is not only the natal chart showing that constant change of identity. Who am I? Where am I? What am I going to do with my life? And the seeding of that and the processing of that, when am I ready? That readiness. And then when are these phases activated? When there are very important cardinal transits. So here, in 2004, Saturn was in your fourth house. You moved to a new state, new home. Now you're married. Saturn is in the seventh, and you're also becoming a father that same year. So a lot of that seventh house, that shift from the Aries independent, follows his own tune, to the commitment of a husband and a father. Can you speak to that transition? How was that for you?
Sure. Yeah. So, I mean, in a sense, there was a lot of love, between my wife and I. But the thing is, that really ultimately was the stressor over the period of the 9, 10 years that we were married, which was, you know, for me, I gave up my studio. It was a lot. It was very stressful. I couldn't deal with it. I couldn't deal with, you know, how to figure that out. So I did. It was pretty sad for me, to be able to do that. But in some way, again, going back to our theme that we're talking about today, is like I did see it as a fresh start of like, okay, I could work from home, set up a studio there, and be a father. So it was a lot of what you're saying.
Yeah. So did you initially in the first phases were you a stay-at-home dad or at some point?
Yeah. So after I gave up my studio, I was mostly a stay-at-home dad because my wife did want to go back to work and she missed her practice. She's a therapist, so um, she did enjoy that, but it became too polarized for both of us. Like we wanted to kind of both be, meeting in the middle more, but we just couldn't work it out. So
But I want to highlight just that seventh house dynamic, the
yeah, it
Saturn
was a
moving.
reinvention, becoming a father. I mean, it was really stepping into more, fully into the father role
And
versus what I was
so
doing before. Yeah.
and so your practice kind of took the backstage, and your
Yeah.
art took a backstage
Yeah.
during those first years.
Yeah. I mean, I was actually trying to shapeshift more into like a graphic designer. That period, I think we did a lot of work together, doing magazines, doing other things. And I was, again, reinventing myself that way,
Hmm.
doing more of that, which gave me more freedom because could work around, all the duties I had as a father and all that. But it was just a constant frustration though, trying to juggle it all.
So it's interesting also that your daughter is born with 3 or 4 planets in Libra, including her nodal axis. So you're a sun in Aries on the south node. She's a sun in Libra on the north node, which is obviously, again, bringing that cardinal energy. And what's interesting, that kind of shift of focus into the seventh house is is how your process of reinventing yourself was catalyzed through a relationship, through the marriage commitment, through the fatherhood process. So you kind of had to become someone else following those new circumstances, which is what many people go through, when you start blending lives like that, you reinvent yourself in a new way. So just highlighting how that showed up for you. Reinvent yourself in a new way. So just highlighting how that showed up for you. And so now looking at when you left the home and 9 years later again. So we see how those important rites of passage are programmed in a way responding to the 9 year cycle. For some people, it's a 7 year cycle because it's more of a Saturn cycle. For you, it is a 9 year cycle, which is more of a nodes time. Every 9 years, the nodes shift on the same axis. So interestingly, like you were saying, This time Pluto was involved in Capricorn, and it was activating the opposition to your Mars in the fourth house. So we see the rupture from home. And of course, activating the natal square you have between Venus and Mars. But it's interesting that every 9 years, this cardinal energy kind of creates a blank slate for you, a new canvas. Interesting analogy, given that you are an artist, a painter, and a graphic designer. Well, thank you for sharing. And wishing you all the best. Pluto is almost out of the cardinal, so you're gonna get some time to rebuild this phase. But you know who's coming to the cardinal angles is next year, Saturn and Neptune moving to Aries. And so we're going to follow up on that when the time comes.
Thanks so much, Maurice. That was really enlightening. I never looked at the Saturn cycle there over the 9 year. It's really interesting.
So thank you, Jeff. I want to bring to your attention, the superpowers of this world. United States is a Cancer country. It has a lot of cardinal energy. Sun, Jupiter, Venus, square Saturn, and Pluto, Chiron in Aries. And so, cardinal sign have a lot to do with identity. And think about the fact that the United States was born from this process of becoming, leaving England, leaving the colony, the kingdom, to this new land, this new chapter. So you can anticipate, how that need to become a new nation with a new identity is part of that cardinality. And of course, it's ongoing. And then, Russia is Capricorn, the opposite, with the Sun and Uranus, Neptune, the nodes as well in cardinal signs. So heavy Capricorn Cancer axis with the moon also close to the ascendant. Now, this is modern Russia. This is the chart from 1991, where after the collapse of the Soviet Union. But the Soviet Union was also Capricorn. Established in 30th of December 1922. So that polarity between the United States and the Soviet entity and then Russia has this cardinal interplay. But we'll explore it. There's more to that. Now, if we look beyond that, other superpowers, China. China is a Libra state, Libra country. 3 planets and series and nodes again in a cardinal sign. It's obviously also a very heavily fixed sign country, but the cardinality is very present. And then, I was looking, so who's the Aries? We have all the superpowers here as Capricorn and Cancer and Libra, and Iran is the Aries country, not a superpower economically, but it does stand on its own. It lives, it has its own identity that is not fused with anyone else. So when I speak of superpower, you obviously have the economic reference, but here it is also an ideological reference. And we see that Iran, even though it's an Aries country, it has a lot of mutable energy, including Neptune and the nodes. And so we see how, as it has its process of becoming, it is highly, deeply fueled by ideology. Ideology is mutable. And if we look at the G7, you know, all the leading countries, this kind of superpower, the United Kingdom is a Capricorn Sun, Cancer Moon, not mom, but moon. Canada is a Cancer Sun. France is a Libra Sun, Cancer Moon. And another Aries is NATO. So the European Union is Scorpio, fixed. But NATO is Aries. Putin is Libra. How Putin as a Libra is trying to kind of reestablish the modern Russia, you know, based on the imperial vision of what it used to be. So as a cardinal sign, is he moving into the future, creating a new chapter, or is he trying to hold on to the past? You know, that hesitation that is typical to cardinal signs of who am I and who I want to become, and being a little stuck between the past and the future is quite common. So from cardinal, we move to fixed signs. And as I said, fixed signs are not so sedentary. You know, if we look at the four fixed signs, Taurus, Leo, Scorpio, Aquarius, we know that Scorpio is about transformation and change. We know that Aquarius is about revolutions. So there's nothing fixed about them. They're actually destroyers. They're actually change makers. And we'll look at the mythology of the fixed sign, which is very rich. So the more fixed signs are more the Taurus, Leo, because Taurus and Leo are about what do we do with our incarnation? You know, the ability to really be in our bodies, to feel, to stabilize. So that whole idea of sustainability, longevity, and immortality is part of the fixed, but the Taurus Leo are the one who are the grounding forces, whereas Scorpio Aquarius are the destroyers, and they don't like fixity in the literal sense. So what is really the essence of fixed signs is the powering of our lives. How do we power our existence? So resources, Taurus, Scorpio. Do we have the fuel powering our incarnation? Where do we get our fuel? What is powering us? You know, whether it's electricity, whether it's oil and gas, whether it's wind, we need power in order to be able to function, deliver, produce. And so these are the signs that power our lives, the resources, the creativity. But then once we power our lives, the fixed signs represent what are we going to do with our incarnation? And therefore, the fixed sign has to do with our willpower, with exercising our will, our free will, and the strength of our will, meaning how we can manifest our destinies. So Taurus has to do with landing. We often think that the first house has to do with our physicality, but the real physicality is the second house and the second sign of Taurus, where we really adapt to being in flesh and bones, to incarnating in the material world. So spirit, Neptune comes into flesh, Venus, Taurus. And not only are we incarnating, but we need to survive on a longer term. So sustainability. What do we need for sustainability? We need food. Food is one of the greatest challenge ever because we have to feed every day. And where do we find the food? Earth provides, we have fruits and vegetables, but they need to be cultivated. They need to be harvested at the right time. What about winter and when nothing grows? So the whole challenge of powering our bodies with food starts with Taurus. And initially, the hunter-gatherer, following the animals, following the seasons, is part of that. But then Taurus said, I cannot have to be with the insecurity where my next meal is coming from. I need to secure my meals over time. And that's how I'm going to acquire land. And by acquiring land, by defining my physical space, I can start to grow. So the ability to stay in one place allows the Taurus to think longer term, to secure their survival on the longer term, so that they can store, they can harvest, and they don't have to worry, in the morning whether they're going to have a meal or not. Now, it's not only food, like I said, it's land. Land is also part of our sustainability. How to work the land, how to connect with the land. So Taurus definitely has to do with continuity, with living a long life. Because if we power our lives effectively, productively, then we can stay grounded but healthy. And then we can do more. We can, produce more. So the bank that will power our lives, it's a food bank, it's a financial bank, it's an energy bank. That's the first fixed sign. Leo has to do with how are we going to power our destiny, and it starts with significance and meaning. Do something with your life, because you can have food on the fridge, but then you can spend your whole life on the couch and waste away or waste your resources. So Leo has to do with production, and in order to produce, again, you need fuel, you need power. Now, you need resources. Who's going to finance your goals? You want to start a new business. You want to lead a new way. The creativity of Leo. I'm here for a reason. So part of the powering of Leo is meaning. My life has to have meaning. I need to know that I have a purpose in my life, that I'm here for a reason. And finding that reason, manifesting my destiny, is part of the fixity of Leo. So the production, the focus, the determination, and development accordingly. So once I produce, Leo talk about powering and sustainability. If we look at, every culture, having children was a resource, because children are going to be loyal to me and they are going to support what I'm doing. If I have a shoe store, I'm selling shoes, my kids can help me at the store. They can, help me rearrange or deal with clients, and maybe they will take over my store when I die. So that continuity and having a tribe or a pride is Leo. And the word pride is not only, in lion vocabulary, having a group, a family, but it's also being proud of what you're doing with your life, being proud of what you are offering, of your production. So, it's making use of your ego, putting your ego to good use. And that is creativity, leadership, and doing meaningful things, things that matter, hopefully. So part of what drains the Leo is having no meaning, having no purpose. That is a slow death. That is when the Leo is depressed, when they don't know what they're here to do. It's a terrible, terrible situation. So Scorpio speaks about the end of resources. What happened when we run out of food, when we run out of fuel, or whatever we produced in Taurus and Leo is coming to some kind of end, a limitation. So Scorpio is facing crisis, the crisis of rejection, the crisis of bankruptcy, the crisis of a bad harvest, the crisis of betrayal. And so everything that they thought they had established, I have my house, I have my job, I have my family, I have a business, I have my dog and my white picket fence established in the Leo Taurus phase of my life. I reach a certain limitation. My wife is leaving me. My business is dying because new competitors are coming and flooding the market. And so I reach a point where my resources are dwindling, where I cannot power my destiny, my life anymore. And there is a risk of death. There is a risk of that's it. It's over. No more fuel. We have to abandon ship. But as a fixed sign, it is also about what am I going to do to not give up, to get a second chance, a second lease, a jump start. So I need to find a new source of fuel, which can mean that I make alliances with other people. Scorpio is well known for other people's resources. So I need an exchange, right, of these resources. I have to give something in order to be able to receive something. So it's all about conditional relations. As long as I can provide, I can receive. And that exchange creates all kinds of necessary alliances. Back in the days, people did not marry because they were in love. They married because it was practical, because, they get the dowry, because they had to make peace with the enemy. So you had to trust out of necessity. And that's how you build trust quite often, is that if you have a common enemy, you have to make a pact. And that will refuel you. So let's say the Ukraine, Vladimir Zelensky is an Aquarian. So he's part of that fixed configuration of what is going to power me and my country. And as an Aquarian, his way of empowering is through alliances, community, NATO. But he's facing this Scorpio crisis of destruction. Pluto's now in Aquarius. And is he running out of fuel? He will run out of weapons. He will run out of the support. So that, we see the elections in France with the far right rising, and that basically means that, these far right people favor Putin for some weird reason. So what is happening is that he's in this scorpionic crisis and death is close. So there's a feeling of either losing a battle, not having enough resources, not being able to power his defense, his ship. And so he needs to make new strategic alliances. He needs to shift his mode of operation, because that's what Scorpio is about. And so Scorpio brings you to a place where you reach a dead end, and when you are almost depleted, the very bottom of your pit. And what can you do to resurrect yourself, to come back into strength? How are you going to turn a crisis into an opportunity and reclaim your strength? And that is why it's hard to beat Scorpios, because they have many lives. Another Scorpio is obviously Biden, right? So everybody's seeing him as a dead horse. And I'm not just talking about 2024, even in 2020. Nobody thought he would win because he doesn't have the personality, the charisma. And there's something about the Scorpio that will resurrect. That's part of their currency. However, they face death. They face the end of the road. Right now, Biden, after his bad debate, we're now talking June 2024, his bad debate, there's a lot of talk about replacing him. So he's running out of resources. What will he do? Will he quit or will he resurrect? That's the life of a Scorpio. It's constant resurrection, limitation, end of the gas tank. And do they, and no, I wrote here second lease, but for Scorpio, they have more than two lives. Until they eventually do die. It happens to the best of us. So we see again the powering of Scorpio through change and transformation, through alliances, necessary trust with new allies who can help me reinvent myself, repower myself. And then, as I said, Aquarius represents also how we powering ourselves. First of all, community, being part of a network, of an organization. As astrologers, we have, are we working on an island? Are we just working on our own practice, or are we connecting with a network of other astrologers to create events and conferences, to get support, to learn from each other. So the powering is through a think tank, a communal will. If we as astrologers have organizations, then we're stronger in the public eye. We're more powerful. We have more legitimacy. If you're just on your own saying you like astrology, it won't get you too far. You'll reach a dead end pretty soon. But if there are many of you, strength in numbers, you can get organized and you can have greater authority. The other powering factor of Aquarius is perspective. It's an air sign. So what is the air power? Is the power to fly. And Aquarius has to do with birds and with space. And so what do you do when you get out of space? You see, oh my God, there are more planets and more resources. Let's mine these asteroids. So you are basically expanding your game to completely new realms and dimensions. But most importantly, you have perspective. And through perspective, you look back at the Earth and you see Earth from a distance. Or you see just as you fly over land, over ocean, you see life on Earth from that vantage point. And that gives you perspective over what's coming. So the power of Aquarius is also the power of knowing the future, anticipating the future, seeing the future. And so when you are part of the future, you are also stronger. You're ahead of the curve. You're not only living in the present. Taurus was thinking about the future by storing, making sure they don't run out of resources every minute, that there's some kind of reserve for difficult times. But Aquarius is thinking about the future in being able to anticipate problems, being able to prevent a crisis before it happens. So this bird eye view gives me insight into a situation. And the power of creativity is an intellectual, it's a mental creativity, as opposed to the Leonian creativity, which is fueled by passion and by emotional investment. Aquarius is fueled by the need for solutions and to upgrade our games so that we have more resources. So, if we build rockets and we can travel through space, we have greater chances of survival. We're going to power our lives, not only as individual, but as a life, as a species. So, that whole need for expansion in order to have access to more resources is part of Aquarius. And with that, obviously, science and technology. The more you understand, the more you learn, the more resources you have. If you're doing research and you find a cure for a disease, that's a resource. It's Aquarius. Now, I spoke about the mythology of the fixed signs, because if you look at them, the fixed signs are actually representing the wheel of change. If you look at the tarot card, it's all the fixed signs. The wheel of change is, you'll see those symbols. The reason is that the fixed signs represent what we, as incarnated beings, how we use our free will to make life meaningful and to manifest the divine plan. So how are we channeling the higher purposes into manifestation? This is why the fixed signs represents the kingdoms, queendoms. So the bull is the domestic animals, the lion is the wild animals, the scorpion, eagle, snake, represent the afterlife. And the Aquarius represents the kingdom of humans. So what we're seeing here with the fixed signs is how are we as individuals powering our lives and producing, doing something with our lives so that we leave a legacy, so that life continues. And this is why when I say they represent kingdom, they represent the power of free will, how we can make a difference in this world, make this world a better place. It's up to us. We can't wait to be saved. We have to save ourselves. That's the message of the fixed signs. So by nature, these are going to be very determined, very focused signs, very powerful signs, because that's what they deal with, power. But there is also concentration. Where cardinal signs were hesitating and fluctuating between the past and the future. Here, fixed signs know who they are. They know what their values are. They know where the power is. And they're more secure in their identity. Okay? So that is, part of that fixity, which has to do more with embodiment, than the dislike of change. So mythologically, the fixed signs are related to the royal stars. The royal stars are Aldebaran, Regulus, Antares, and Fomalhaut. Eye of the bull, heart of the lion, heart of the scorpion, and the fish that sits below the Aquarian constellation. So these are stars, which means that they belong to these constellations, and they drift over time. So they're now in a different sign. The constellations drift over the signs. Won't get into it now, but they do capture the fixed archetypes. And those 4 royal stars represent nobility. Many people in positions of leadership have strong placements of the royal stars. A whole lecture on that someday. But it's part of that, being kings, being queens, being leaders, and bringing the divine into manifestation. They're also, representing the 4 directions, east, north, and south. Another interesting representation of the fixed sign is in the biblical book of Ezekiel. The first chapter. So Ezekiel sees, has this vision where he sees this big cloud, and then there's some kind of being, the cherubim, uh, kind of reveal themselves as guardians of the heavens. And of course, it's a prophetic dreams, which symbolizes change. So he looks and he sees the clouds and fire and chaos. And out of that chaos, he sees a being with 4 heads, 4 wings, and the face of a man, Aquarius, the face of a lion, Leo, the face of the ox, Taurus, and then the face of the eagle, Scorpio, represented. Scorpio is represented by scorpion, snake, eagle, phoenix. So this mythical figure is an archetype of change, the changing of times, the changing of, again, of destiny, and how we are called to manifest something of a higher importance. The griffin is often an animal that is a fusion of these 4 fixed signs, the eagle wings, and whether it's a lion face or a human face with lion paws, and the tail of the bull, or the rear end is a bull. So, it's interesting to see. Some people with strong fixed energy, Mohandas Gandhi, born with Leo moon, North Node in Leo, square Mars, Venus in Scorpio, opposing Pluto, Jupiter in Taurus, and the South Node in Aquarius. So he has this big fixed cross. And, what was he about? Obviously, went through his own transformation from being an elite, arrogant lawyer to a freedom fighter. So as a Libra sun sign and Libra rising, he also brought a new identity and the becoming of India. However, part of what was happening, the way he managed to free India from colonialism, was, England was powering the world. You see the queen, that moon in Leo at the top of the chart, there's a queen ruling his universe, and he is there to dethrone her, Mars square the moon, and to re-empower his people. Coming from Aquarius, has a vision for an enlightened, advanced, upgraded society, a liberation. And so a lot of what, of his ability to create this new reality was through the motivation, the power of the activism. So it's very interesting that all these fixed signs, which are the need to power his revolution, the need to kill the queen, to dethrone her, and to bring new leadership, new nobility, is in the cardinal houses of a new identity for his people. He had to go through his own identity crisis, but then that reflected on a more global sense of identity, a national identity. So you see how the fixed signs in angular cardinal houses really capture the story pretty well. Another interesting, very fixed personality, Christine Lagarde, who, was the head of the International Monetary Fund. So number one, monetary fund has to do with resources. She's all fixed. Taurus rising, Mars, Saturn in Scorpio, Moon, Pluto, Venus in Aquarius. And so you see how she's dealing with power dynamics, with distribution of funds, and with the support of nations through the banking system, which, obviously we can debate about the legitimacy and the, how they operate, but from a fixed archetype point of view, she really holds that space. But also on a personal level, being a female leader, a Leo moon again, empowering fixed signs, empowering women in position of leadership and decision, being a decision maker, being the one who holds the keys to, the funds. So I thought that was a nice illustration as well. And now moving into the mutable signs, Gemini, Virgo, Sagittarius, and Pisces, and the cadent houses, 3rd house, 6th house, 9th house, and 12th house. So the mutable signs represent the concept of distribution. Once you found out who you are, or you became who you were meant to be through the cardinal, and then you power your incarnation through the fixed signs, and you produce what you're meant to produce in this life, you come now into the distribution. And so the mutable signs are about how the resources, how the concepts, whatever was done and created, can now, be accessible to everyone else. So the mutable signs remind us of the interdependence, interconnectedness of all life components. And that what happens in one country affects what happens on the other side of the globe. What happens on the animal kingdom affects what happened on a human level. That we are part of this global network, and there's no real way to be an individual. So the fixed signs were about, what am I to do? What is my power? What is my destiny? What is my free will? But here in the mutable, you come back, you're reminded that once you found yourself, you need to cooperate. You need to be reminded that your well-being affects other people's well-being, which also means that if you hurt someone else, you're going to be hurt as well. So that interdependence is basically seeing how we're all relying on each other. And there is a mutual interest, a global interest, to make everyone healthy and satisfied. Because if part of the chain is destroyed or weakened, everybody else is affected. If the river is polluted, the land is going to be polluted, the ocean's going to be polluted, the species, it's a whole network. So mutable signs are about the interconnectedness and the fact that we are, that we need to approach life in a holistic way. So people with strong mutability can have that natural instinct to think more globally, to think more holistically, to understand the global perspective of things, rather than, really looking at one item only and not taking into consideration the rest of it. You know, it's the same when we speak of holism. And we talk about medicine, holistic medicine. You know, if your little finger hurts, you can treat the symptom, but if you're not looking at the neurological connection, if you're not looking at what causes the pain, maybe it's coming from, you know, the back of your brain, then you may only have temporary relief. So that is what the mutable signs are about. This also means that mutable signs have a harder time taking a break from life because everything happens all the time. I'm always connected to everything. And I am all, and everybody is me as well. So naturally, these are signs that need to find solutions that are not regional, that are not symptomatic. They need to get to the root cause of things, the global aspect of things. For example, many of them will be philosophers, thinkers. Many of them will try to understand life and the meanings that are not only my meaning, they're not only relative, but the meanings that are true for everybody. Again, if I am healthy, it will help everyone else to be healthy. So there is, in that sense, a sense of community, a sense of connectedness that comes with immutable signs, and therefore a need for adaptability, because it's less about my needs, my understanding. It's our needs and our lives. It's plural. So Gemini, as an air sign, represent the fact that in order to understand life, you need to connect. 1 and 1 equals 2. So you need to connect things to get to a result. Life doesn't happen in fragments. So Gemini tries to bridge the different fragments. The light of the sun, the wind, precipitation, all these different elements interact together. And with my Gemini mind, I'm going to see how one thing adding to another can give us answers. And that's how we build knowledge. So Gemini is the sign of learning. But how can you learn something if you don't understand the interconnectedness of everything? If you want to learn about the mouse, you're going to have to learn about the cat. And if you want to learn about the cat, you have to learn about the lion, etc. So one thing will always lead to another thing. And so Gemini pieces the puzzle and find one piece here and one other piece here. And all these pieces on their own, they're meaningless. But once you connect them, you start to have the picture. And you start to understanding, because there's a logic. This piece really fits into that, and then leads to another piece. So the thread of logic gives explanation to how things work. You know, how long is the day gonna come? When is the sun gonna rise? Why is it coming east and not south? All these answers begin with connection. And of course, Gemini is the sign of language and transportation. Language is about bridging. You know, if I speak to you and explain something to you, you can reflect back on that. So we connect our brains through communication. And then transportation, you know, I'm going from one place to another. I'm traveling. You know, if we look at air, air is about seeding things. The birds are spreading the seeds in different places. So we go back to the networking aspect. And on a very modern level, you know, Gemini has to do with media, right? With how we learn and how we share knowledge. Then Virgo represents how we use the knowledge. You know, it's the second mercurial sign. Mercury rules Gemini and Virgo. So in Gemini, we figure things out. We connect the dots and understand that there's a thread. With Virgo, we now apply the knowledge. And so we develop our skills and do something. We lead our lives. We learn how to brush our teeth. We learn how to, you know, plant and harvest and take care of our lives. So we establish our lives and we develop skills to perform a function. So Virgo has to do with proper function. You know, if you buy a fridge, its function is to refrigerate and to keep your food in a cooler temperature and preserve it. The fridge depends, you know, in order for your fridge to function, it needs electricity. So you need an electrician to power your fridge. Electricity is Aquarius. But then you need plastic in order to have all the drawers and the shelves on your fridge. So in order for one thing to function, many other services need to come in order for the function to work. So I'm here doing my astrology work. So that's my Virgo service. But I need Zoom to be able to transmit that online and record myself. I need a microphone. So I need someone to manufacture microphones. And I need someone to tailor my shirt. And I need someone to bring me headphones. So all the technology that comes to support my function relies on other people's function. And so through Virgo, we build a chain of services that one service relies on the service of another and another and another. And so everything is interconnected. And if one person calls in sick and says, today, I don't want to give electricity, you know, I want to take a day off, everybody suffer. You know, one component of the chain is absent, is not functional, is ill, or is just not showing up. Nobody can function. That holistic process. This is why Virgos have such high work ethics, you know, as an archetype, because they know that if they don't perform well, it will create a chain reaction. It will snowball into more problems. You know, we all feel that when the internet is down and we can't do anything pretty much. You know, we have to slow down and go back to read a book. So that is part of the Virgo experience and the mutability of Virgo. Then we have Sagittarius, which represents the overreaching meaning of life. You know, we often say that Sagittarius can be stubborn in their convictions, in their ideologies. They may try to convert people of what they think is right. And the reason is that from a Sagittarius point of view, there is a meaning that unites us all. My meaning, fire, is our meaning, mutable. So if there is a God, it's a God for everybody. If it's a sin to kill, it's not only for this tribe, it's for everything and everybody. So Sagittarius is about trying to unpack, reveal, learn about the larger meanings of life. The personal truth must be tied to an all-encompassing meaning. And that is why they're very connected to nature, to the vastness of open spaces, because there is that global understanding that nature operates in an interdependent way as well. That if we understand the birds, we understand the trees, we understand the water, we understand the mammals, we understand the insects. So we understand not just in a Gemini way that the bird will eat the insect and will need to, you know, have nutrition and you know, kind of build our equation like that. Sagittarius looks at it from, you know, yeah, they're all linked, but what does that mean? Where does that take us? What is the purpose of all this life? Dancing, interacting, eating each other. So there's a need for a fundamental overreaching meaning that connects the fabric of life. And that is why they don't settle for, you know, oh, this is just my belief. Because if I'm right, then everybody needs to know it because it's going to serve everybody. So that mutability is that need to spread the gospel. I have the truth for all of us. So there's always a dilemma. You know, I'm going to talk one day about that. There's always a dilemma, a big conflict in Sagittarius, that it's on the one hand a fire sign, which is very personal, and it's a mutable sign, which is very global. And they're not always knowing how to regulate that, how to match that. So they can end up, you know, confusing the personal with the global. But from an archetypal point of view, it reveals, you know, Sagittarius helps us reveal why we're here. And even if we only get, again, only a part of the puzzle, at least it's something to get by. At least it's something that can lead us and help us make some progress, hopefully expand. Pisces is, the ultimate mutable sign because it is the unifying factor. It is the fact that we're not different at all, says Pisces. You may be Hungarian or black or even a bird or a human, but guess what? We all want to be healthy. We all need food, and we all need shelter when it rains. So Pisces recognizes that despite our physical differences, we're all built of the same. We're all made of the same materials. And so the homogeneity, the commonality, the unifying factor that dissolves our identities, our flags. And, life on earth is what matters, not John or Susan. But then it's life as a whole in the whole universe. So that global mutability of Pisces is really the reminder that we are one and that we originate from a single source, or singularity. And therefore, when we when we have strong Piscean energies, we can easily adapt, identify with everybody else. Where a Cancer says, this is my country, this is my family, Pisces says, everybody's family, everything is family. It's global. And it's not that one is better than the other. They each have a reason and a function and a meaning to being part of this 12 archetypal wheel. But yeah, Pisces are not going to be focused because of that. This is why sometimes Piscean people, especially Mercury in Pisces, will suffer from attention deficit disorder because their view is vast. They're not detail oriented. The pieces are not important. It's the sum of it all that matters. And so they can easily change costumes, change identities, move around. They morph and become everything. And yeah, it can be hard to keep up if you're an Aries or if you are a Cancer who needs something very specific and who needs, focus. Pisces has that multiplicity. And what is true to all the mutable signs in that sense is the multiplicity, is the ability to multitask, to operate on different levels at the same time, to shapeshift. Right? Now, if you look at this axis, Gemini, Sag have to do with education, knowledge, understanding, and Pisces, Virgo have to do with service, application. So once you go to university and high school and you get your degrees and your diplomas, then you can have a profession, Virgo, Pisces. Now, as some of you know my work about the 12th house in Pisces and how it relates to vocational development. Because one of the functions of Pisces is that because it's a mutable sign and because it's so global, it reflects our ability to tap into the collective consciousness. And so the service provided by Virgo can then be distributed through the Pisces channels to the greater whole. Okay, so you can read the book on Neptune and the 12th house and Pisces. It's going to give you all the download on that. Herd immunity, because we're all one and we're built of the same material, the risk of Pisces is that if there's one vulnerability, then everybody's vulnerable. But if we are all part of each other, if we are each other, then critical mass helps us build immunity. So all issues of pandemics and contagion are very Piscean. It's not a coincidence that the last pandemic really exploded during Pisces, in March with 5 planets in Pisces. Now, classic mutable people. I took the example of Engels and Karl Marx. Look at this mutable chart. These are the architects of Marxism, communism, and the philosophy that resources, you see how his fixed houses, succeedent houses, are in mutable sign. So he wants to power everybody holistically and provide resources distributed evenly among the others, which is a mutable ideal. So his North Node in Pisces conjunct Jupiter is all about how we're going to destroy the hierarchies, the elite, and the religious institutions, which are brainwashing people, so to speak. So you see how the mutability in fixed houses is so graphic. And then you get the chart, right? You get the gist of it. That's the power of this knowledge, is you understand concepts and then you're not lost in the details. You learn the big picture and you understand the details immediately. It falls into place. So in this case, it's a very extreme, it's everything pretty much is in mutable sign except for Saturn and Venus. And, the philosopher, the thinker, and the idealism, the naivete of that approach of, the destruction of individuality for communality, is part of this. And Karl Marx, is very similar. He has this heavy Pisces, Sagittarius connection with Mercury, also in Gemini, but he's a fixed, born on an eclipse in Taurus, fixed. And so we definitely see that it's all of, his whole philosophy of the meaning of life, mutable, these high theories of Uranus, Neptune, are all about money and power and assets. How to power our lives. An eclipse in the second house in Taurus. So they both have this kind of weird amalgam of fixed signs with mutable signs. And it reflects their whole life purpose and ideology. So I hope you better understand the modes and can apply this to, your analysis and knowledge. If you want to support this work, you don't want to enroll, but you want to support, there's a donation button on my website at the bottom, mauricefernandez.com. Scroll down. You can chip in $1, $1,000, $1,000,000. It's okay. It's approved. And in more immediate ways, subscribe to the YouTube channel, be part of this community. More videos will be coming, and as a subscriber, you'll be notified. Thank you, everyone, and until next time.